Chapter 6, the first of many section hikes. I drove to Rainbow Springs Campground where I took a shuttle back to Dix Creek Gap. I got back on the trail at about 2 o'clock. I walked carefully because I anticipated that I would experience more pain with each step, but I was wrong. I was feeling good and walked by Plum Orchard Gap Shelter. This was my third trip there. It was 4 o'clock and I felt good. I walked 7.8 more miles to Muskrat Creek Shelter. The last portion of Blythe Gap was particularly challenging. There are many notes left along the trail. Today I came across a note written on tissue paper left visibly along the trail. It was a simple but profound message: I love you. No one was addressed and there was no signature. So I filled in the blanks, making it a unique message for me. It was encouraging. I also encountered my first snake. Someone asked me what kind it was. I said, in my understanding, there are only two kinds, and I fear them both. There are dead ones and live ones. It was live but small. He was not interested in me, nor was I in him. He left quickly, and so did I. When I started on this last leg, 2.8, a young woman with her backpack still attached was sitting on the trail. As I approached her, I said hello, and she responded, "Welcome to North Carolina." As I started a steep grade, I met a man asking if I had seen his wife at Blythe Gap. I told him a lady was sitting at the bottom of the grade. The husband left his pack and returned to carry her pack. Later, I learned that they were on their honeymoon. It was then that I realized why he was doing it. I got to Muskrat Shelter at 8 o'clock, and the newlyweds arrived at 9 o'clock. I've met 3 couples who are traveling the trail for their honeymoon. Can you imagine telling your bride, "Hey, how about a walk on the Appalachian for our honeymoon?" For many, divorce would come very soon after, or no marriage at all. April 21st, 1999. I left at 7:45 a.m., feeling good. My knees were not in pain. Most people walk if they feel okay with their body. I didn't care how far I traveled. I wanted to walk for most of the day. I had 9 miles by lunch. I sat with several hikers with knee problems, as I had experienced. Others I met were traveling without regard to the pain, and I might add that they were traveling fast, but a hiker by the trail named Wanachare felt he had pulled another muscle, and it was slowing him as it was slowing me. I never saw him after that conversation until a week later at Nantahala. I kept pushing forward until the sun was up and felt good. Finally, I decided to go as far as Big Spring Shelter. Since I met 4 section hikers on Springer Mountain in early March when I was checking it out, I dreaded Albert Mountain. Since I've not been closely watching the map, I imagined I had climbed Albert Mountain a dozen times, but I hadn't. The section hikers I met in early March warned me not to cut my fingernails because I needed them to pull my way across the rocks. Their description of Albert Mountain was remarkably close. By far, it was the most challenging mountain that I had climbed. The most difficult climbs come at the close of a long day. This was one of the highest and longest days that I've walked on the trail. Since climbing Albert Mountain, I've been on a campaign. I'm recommending that no one name a child Albert. I'd rather have a boy named Sue than Albert. It was a bear. Standing Indian Mountain is at an elevation of about 5,400 feet, and I walked 19.3 miles. I stayed at Big Spring Shelter. As we sat around the shelter, the hikers got as well acquainted as possible in a few hours. Mark, who retired young, walked the entire trail several years ago. He has been walking a favorite portion of the trail for a couple of weeks. There was John, a carpenter from New Jersey. Also, I met Lone Star from New Zealand and Reed Dyer from Maine. My son Jason named these two, Eric and Randy Rudolph. I met several others in the shelter. All were part of the trail community. I'm amazed at the care for each other along the trail. I realized I would pick up my car on Thursday, a noticeably short day. Reed and Lone Star were taking a day off in Franklin, NC. So I asked Reed to drive my car into Franklin and pick me up at Winding Stair Gap, which gave me another 3 miles on the trail. It worked. April 22nd, 1999. I got on the trail by 7:30. I felt tired, especially my feet, but I knew it would be a short day, and I was going home at the close of my walk. We, Reed, Lone Star, and I, arrived at Wallace Gap early. I walked 1.5 miles to Rainbow Springs Campground, where my car was parked. I returned to Wallace Gap, where I turned my car over to a kid whose last name I did not know until that moment. However, I took a picture of him before he left. He and Lone Star were glad for the car. He agreed to pick me up at Winding Stair Gap. By 1 o'clock, we both decided I could do it quicker than that, so he agreed to return earlier. Then 1 o'clock, I got to Winding Stairs at noon and wondered what to do with the time other than take off my boots and rest my feet. As I descended the road, a man asked me how I was doing. I began conversing with Paul, which occupied my time until my ride arrived. Paul has a ministry that leaves drinks and food in several nearby shelters, along with gospel tracts and Bibles. He has an exciting story. Trail markers. Several terms surface as you travel the AT. Through hikers are the highest on the social ladder of AT hikers, so I'm told. Some people find ways of putting themselves above others, and others put themselves below others everywhere. Even those traveling the AT find ways of putting themselves up or down. I suggest that each of us is unique and of excellent value because God revealed it in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Now, if God did that for me, I must have the worth and value of being the unique person he created. Don't you think? There are good people everywhere. Along the trail, you encounter the trail angels. Those are people who do extraordinary things to encourage those walking the trail. The distinction made is that it's for the through hiker, not the through hiker as I was the first day I left when I said, I am through, but those who walk from one end to the other in a season. But I found the hikers to be exciting and accommodating people, no matter if they are out for a day, a section, an extended session, or walking in their favorite places. There are those I met whose names I will never know, who made a good impression on me. One of the things I have marked on this walk is stated in Hebrews 13:2 KJV. Be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. As I came out of Plum Orchard Shelter in great pain, I noticed a cooler at the base of the trail. It had an encouraging note for through hikers and said snacks for through hikers only. I'm glad that on my journey, God has provided for whosoever will. April 26, 1999, a section hike. Wilson Schuler of Bryson City, North Carolina, drove my car to Winding Stair Gap, where he let me out, and I began walking at 1:30. Mr. Schuler promised to pick me up at Fontana Dam when I called unless he got a better deal from Wheeling. I walked until 9 o'clock through rain, out of the fog, into the sunshine and darkness. It was my first time hiking with my headlamp. I didn't know when I would get to the Cold Spring Shelter. I wouldn't stop at the first shelter because it was just 3 p.m., too early for me, so I moved forward at the risk of walking in the darkness. As I was walking, I saw this strange barrier before me. To my surprise, this shelter was adjacent to the trail. When I got there, I asked if there was more room in the inn, but I learned that it was full and no one was willing to give up their space. Not to mention that most of them were bedded down for the night. I was told there were campsites just ahead on the right. Before I got too far, a young woman came toward me with a light, showing me there were campsites near them. I met Amy and Andrew, who wanted someone near them. I wanted to be that someone, not that I couldn't have camped alone. I got busy setting up my tent in the damp darkness of the night. Amy and Andrew were busy cooking their evening meal. While erecting my tent again, Amy asked me if I would like their leftovers since it was too much for them to eat, and I came in late. I graciously accepted. I asked her to put the pot down on the ground, and when I finished building my house, I would gladly enjoy her generosity. When I got ready to eat, I couldn't find my fork. I realized that I left it on the counter back home. I sheepishly asked to borrow a fork to eat the food they gave me. As I began eating it, I realized it was cold and wondered why they didn't finish it. I was still gracious in my thanks to them. I think Amy was afraid to pour it out because she might be cited for killing animals without a permit. I was thankful enough that I washed the pan and returned it to them. April 27th, 1999. I broke camp and was on the trail before 8 o'clock. I did not say goodbye to my neighbors who were still sleeping. Today, during the early part of my walk, I caught up with the couple I encountered at Blythe Gap. Remember the young bride who welcomed me to North Carolina? She and her husband were discussing why she was strolling. They were speaking another language in addition to English. They didn't realize I was behind them until I excused myself and walked past them. I caught enough of the conversation to learn that she had blisters on her feet and couldn't go any faster no matter how much he pushed. Unfortunately, most of my walking has been IWR, instrument walking rules. Again, it rained, but I was determined to get to Nantahala River, Western North Carolina. It is the location of the Nantahala Outdoor Center. I pressed on. Someone asked me if I had blisters on my feet. I wondered what feet. I have a right blister and a left blister. My feet were numb when I reached the center, but I was glad to have gotten a hostel room. It served me well. As I got to my room, it began raining heavily. I was pleased with the shelter. The cabin was a room with bunk beds for 4. I prayed that no one else would be put there, but they weren't. However, the room next door was home to a couple of guys. After I was in the room briefly, the smoke alarm went off. I thought, do I smell that bad? But I was relieved after it went off 3 more times while I was there. After bathing, I realized it must be something other than the trail smell that set off the alarm. I had a restful night on a soft mattress in a warm, and dry place. For a treat, I ate supper at a restaurant on the river. As I ate, I watched the kayaks going through the rapids. I soaked up as much grease as I could. My body seemed to cry out for some lard. Would you believe it? Amy and Andrew came in. You remember the couple that fed me last night? I wasn't sure it was them. You recall, I came into the campsite after dark. When I was confident, I went to their table to thank them again for their kindness. I caught myself before I said it. I almost said, this sure is better than that stuff we had last night for supper. I'm glad I didn't say that. Do you remember want a chair from a few days ago? Well, he found one. I saw him sitting by the river, eating pretzels, enjoying the good life. I didn't recognize him then, but I saw him later. He was on his third day, waiting for his knees to get better so he could continue the trip. He was also waiting for some trekking poles to assist him in walking. I saw him several times around as other hikers came in, showing them around the area as if he owned it. April 28th, 1999. After breakfasting a lunch cup of soup, a granola bar, and a Coke, I was back on the trail by 8:15. Another New Zealander, Apteryx, passed me quickly with full steam up the hill. He was traveling without a shirt, while I was wearing my long-sleeve shirt, which felt good. He didn't slow up. He carries a 68-pound pack. This guy must weigh 230 pounds. He is in good condition. Today's first climb was 7 miles to an elevation of 4,500, about 3,000 feet in the 7-mile climb. It was a bugger. I dare not use the word bear, but it was a gentle slope. The real challenge seems to always come at the close of the day. Today was no exception to the rule. The Brown Fork Gap Shelter was a 16-mile day. Fortunately, after a very steep climb, I got to the shelter where there were only two others. Apteryx, or Kiwi, and Hobini were the only two there, so there was room in the inn for another. I was glad because it looked like it would rain again, and sure enough, it did. I got to know these fellow pilgrims. I've met many friendly folks, including these two guys, whom I will never likely see again, but the brief contact with them enriched my journey. The support and interest in the welfare of one another among those walking the trail amazes me. Apteryx led the way from the shelter. I was second, and Hobini, the young guy, was last. Even on the trail, the young folks seemed to have problems moving early in the day. But as you would expect, Hobini caught and passed me, but I later passed him and got into town before him. Ha ha. In 5 minutes, I learned the following from a southbounder. He is 74, has been retired for 14 years, walking a portion of the trail each year since he retired at 60. His mother-in-law died, had a proctectomy and heart valve surgery 1 year ago, and now is medically free to walk the trail again. I left out many details, but I'll never forget this man. I'm not sure if he needed to talk or perhaps to take a rest, but he serves as a person of inspiration. As I listened to this man, Hobini passed me for the first time. Trail marker. Take time to hear others. You may lighten their load and enrich your life simultaneously. Trail marker. You follow the white blazes. When you see two white blazes, don't worry. You do not have double vision, but you are to pay close attention. There's a significant change in the trail ahead. There are those times when God is getting your attention. It could be the two white blazes reminding you this is a crucial time. Pay close attention I am. Are you? I arrived at Fontana Dam and called for a shuttle from the dock to the visitor center. I called Wilson Schuler, who hadn't gotten a better deal from Wheeling. He said he would be there in an hour. I showered as I waited for him. He drove us back to his house on the side of the mountain. The road to his house was muddy because his daughter had recently moved to a manufactured home nearby. We had to take a running start to get up to his house. After leaving him with a sandwich shop at the nearest gas station, I tanked the car, got myself a foot-long Blimke sandwich and the giant soft drink they sold, and headed home. I arrived safely at a warm welcome at 9 o'clock. I was tired and weary, but glad to be home again. Chapter 7. Across the Smokies.